The diner sat just off the highway, glowing under buzzing yellow lights like it had been there forever. Trucks came and went, and the smell of fried food hung heavy in the air. It was the kind of place people stopped at when they were too tired to go home, or when home didn't feel like much to go back to. The single father pushed open the door and stepped inside, his shoulders stiff from a long day. He worked with his hands, and it showed. His jacket was worn at the elbows, and his boots carried dust from job sites and parking lots. He wasn't in a hurry. He never was any more. Life had taught him that rushing didn't fix much. He slid into a booth near the window and ordered something simple. While waiting, he rubbed his eyes and stared at the road outside, watching headlights pass. His phone buzzed once with a reminder he didn't need. Pick up groceries tomorrow. Pay the electric bill. Usual things. His life had become a list after his wife passed. Lists helped him stay steady. That was when he noticed them. Across the diner, in a booth pushed against the wall, sat a woman in a worn military jacket. The fabric was faded, the patches stitched on carefully but clearly old. Her hair was pulled back tight, like she was used to order and rules. Across from her sat two small girls who looked so alike it was impossible not to notice. Same eyes. Same messy hair tied with cheap rubber bands. Twins. The girls were sharing a plate of food between them. The woman barely touched hers. Every time one of the girls lifted a fork, she smiled and told them to eat more. She kept saying she wasn't hungry, but her hands trembled slightly as she held her coffee. The father tried not to stare. He had learned that people didn't like being watched when they were struggling. Still, something about the scene pulled at him. It wasn't just the thin coats the girls wore, or the way the woman kept glancing toward the door like she expected someone to come in. It was the look in her eyes. He had seen it before, in the mirror, years ago. The look of someone holding things together by force. The waitress walked over to their booth and asked if they wanted anything else. Her voice was kind but tired. The woman shook her head quickly. "No, thank you. We're fine," she said. The waitress hesitated. "You sure? I can bring some pie. It's fresh." The woman's hand tightened around her cup. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "No, really." "That's okay." One of the twins looked up. "Mom?" The woman leaned closer. "It's all right. We'll get something later." The father felt a knot form in his chest. He wasn't trying to listen, but the diner was quiet, and words carried. When the waitress walked away, he heard the woman whisper, "We just need to rest a little, okay?" The girls nodded, though their heads drooped like they might fall asleep right there. The father's food arrived, but he barely touched it. He kept looking over, telling himself it wasn't his place. He had his own responsibilities. His own child waiting at home, probably already asleep. He knew better than to get involved in other people's messes. But then he saw the woman check her wallet. It was thin. Too thin. She looked at the bill on the table and swallowed hard. Something shifted in him. He stood up before he could talk himself out of it. The floor creaked under his boots as he walked toward their booth. The woman noticed him immediately. Her posture changed, shoulders straightening, eyes sharp. Training didn't leave a person easily. "Excuse me," he said calmly, stopping a few steps away so he didn't seem threatening. "I don't mean to interrupt." The woman pulled the girls a little closer. "Can I help you?" He nodded toward the empty plates. "I just wanted to say, your kids seem exhausted." "They're fine," she replied quickly. "I believe you," he said. Mine used to get that look too when days got long. That caught her off guard. "Mine? I'm a single dad," he said simply. "Have been for a while." The twins looked at him with curiosity now, eyes bright despite their tired faces. He took a breath. "I overheard a bit. Not on purpose. I just..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. You don't look like you've got a place lined up for tonight. The woman's jaw tightened. We're managing. He nodded again. I know. You are. But managing doesn't always mean safe. Silence settled between them. A few people at nearby tables glanced over, sensing something serious was happening. He met her eyes and spoke slowly. You and your girls are coming with me. Her reaction was immediate. Absolutely not. That's not. He raised a hand gently. I'm not ordering you. I'm offering. She stood up slightly, protective. I don't know you. You shouldn't, he said. And I wouldn't expect you to trust me right away. The twins looked between them, confused but quiet. He continued. All I'm saying is this. I've got a warm house, a spare room, food, no strings. Just a place to sleep where you can lock the door and breathe for one night. Her eyes searched his face, looking for something wrong. Why? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, because I've been on the other side of that booth. And because someone once helped me when I didn't ask. She shook her head. I can't risk my children. I wouldn't ask you to, he replied. You can take my license plate number. Call someone you trust. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, you walk away. The girls tugged gently on her sleeves. Mom, I'm tired, one whispered. The woman closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, they were wet but steady. I'm not looking for charity. Neither was I, he said. This isn't that. The waitress returned with the check. The woman reached for it, then froze when the father picked it up instead. I've got it, he said. No, she protested. It's okay, he replied. Let me do this. She hesitated, then nodded once, stiff and reluctant. Outside, the night air was cold. The girls shivered as they climbed into his truck. He handed them spare blankets he kept behind the seat, leftovers from road trips with his child. The woman sat in the front seat, tense, watching the road as if memorizing every turn. You're a soldier? He asked quietly. Yes, she said. Still am. He nodded. Thank you. She didn't respond, but her grip on her jacket loosened just a little dot as they drove away from the diner, its lights shrinking behind them. None of them knew what would come next. But for the first time that night, the twins' heads rested against the seat, eyes closed. And for the first time in a long while, the woman let herself lean back, just enough to breathe. The truck moved quietly down the dark highway. The hum of the engine filled the space between them, a low, steady sound that seemed to slow time itself. The father kept his eyes on the road, but he could feel them watching him from the back seat. The twins' small hands clutched the blankets he had given them, their shoulders pressed together as if they could shield each other from the weight of the night. The soldier in the passenger seat sat rigid, one hand gripping the edge of the seat, the other holding her jacket close. Her eyes were fixed on the passing lines of light on the road, but she wasn't looking at the road, or at anything at all. She was thinking, calculating, deciding if she could trust him. He stole a glance at her. I know this isn't easy, he said softly. You don't have to say anything. Her jaw tightened. You have no idea what you're asking, she said. Her voice was calm but firm, the kind that could stop someone in their tracks if they weren't careful. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't pleading. She was stating a fact. And he understood that. He did. He'd been told no more times than he could count, though never quite like this. He wasn't about to force anything. He simply nodded and kept driving. I know what it's like to feel like you're alone, he said. To feel like you have to manage everything by yourself, or nothing works at all. I lost someone once. I've had to raise a child alone. I've had nights where I didn't know where we'd sleep. I get it. The woman's eyes flicked toward him. A faint shadow of surprise passed over her features. She hadn't expected him to understand. Most people didn't, not really. She looked back out the window, letting the streetlights blur past, her mind running through every scenario, every reason why this might be a trap. But there was something in his voice, something that made her hesitate. It wasn't pity. It wasn't condescension. It was understanding. Genuine understanding. Why would you do this for us? She asked after a long pause. He shrugged slightly. Because someone once helped me when I didn't ask. Because it's the right thing to do. Because it's human. You know, when someone is tired, hungry, or scared, sometimes they just need a little help. That's all. No one is perfect. No one is a hero. Just people trying to do the right thing. She shook her head, but it was not a strong shake. The words had landed somewhere she hadn't realized she was carrying the need to hear them. She kept silent for the rest of the drive, letting the twins fall asleep in the back while she stared ahead, alert but exhausted. Every few miles, she checked the rearview mirror, making sure they were alone, making sure no one was following, making sure that the stranger who had just taken them in wasn't going to disappear with their lives in his hands. She had been trained to be cautious, to read every situation, to protect the little ones at all costs. And yet, she found herself relaxing just a fraction, enough to let the hum of the road lull her shoulders down a little. The father noticed her glance at the mirror. "You're safe," he said gently. "No one's following. No one's going to hurt you. I promise." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I hope you mean that." "I do," he said. "I wouldn't risk them for anything." The rest of the drive passed in a quiet rhythm. He thought about what he could offer them. The small home he had managed to turn into a place of stability for himself and his child. It wasn't much, but it was warm, and it was safe. That had to be enough for now. When they reached the house, he parked in the driveway and cut the engine. The night was still, the kind of quiet that pressed in around the edges of the property. He opened the door for the woman and the twins, offering his hand to the younger of the two girls first. She hesitated, then took it, letting him guide her gently across the yard. The older twin followed, holding tightly to her sister's hand. The woman followed last, surveying everything carefully, ready to react if needed, but finding nothing threatening. Just a simple house, a light in the window, a sense of normalcy she hadn't felt in weeks, maybe months. Inside, the warmth hit them immediately. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and tidy. A few toys were scattered in the corner of the living room, remnants of a child who had once played there and still did when he had the time. The father motioned to the kitchen. "Go wash up. I'll put something together for you to eat. You need something warm." The twins hesitated at first, then scurried toward the sink, hands under the water, splashing and giggling quietly. The sound was small, but magical in the silence of the house. The soldier stayed back, leaning against the doorway, watching them, watching him. She felt a strange mix of relief and guilt. Relief that someone had stepped in when she was too exhausted to fight anymore. Guilt that she had let someone see her weakness, her need. But the father didn't judge. He moved with quiet efficiency, pulling plates from the cupboard, warming up leftovers, making simple food that smelled like home. When he called them to eat, the girls sat down quickly, picking at the food, still quiet, but more at ease. The soldier finally sat too, glancing at the plate he had prepared for her. She hesitated, then took a bite. She didn't speak at first, but the act itself was a statement. Acceptance, trust, small steps, but steps nonetheless. Over the next hour, they settled into an unusual routine. The father asked the girls about school, their favorite games, what they liked to read. The soldier answered in clipped sentences, still protective, still cautious, but more relaxed than she had been in weeks. The girls laughed softly when he told a story about his own child, and even the soldier allowed a faint smile to appear on her lips. It was the first real smile since the diner. After dinner, the father cleared the dishes while the twins played with blocks on the floor. The soldier stood by the window, looking out at the dark street, thinking about what she had left behind and what might come next. She didn't know how long they would stay, or what this stranger might expect in return, but she knew something important. For the first time in days, they weren't alone. They were safe, at least for tonight. And sometimes that was all that mattered. The father returned to the living room with blankets and pillows for the girls. He showed them where they could sleep and assured them he would check on them in the morning. They nodded, snuggling under the blankets, their eyes heavy. He sat down in a chair nearby, letting them rest, letting the quiet settle. The soldier remained standing for a moment, watching the twins, then finally sank onto the couch, letting herself breathe. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly. She wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, but tonight, at least, they had shelter, warmth, and someone who cared. As the house grew quiet, the father reflected on the decision he had made. He hadn't thought it through entirely, hadn't made a plan. He had simply acted on what felt right, on what his heart told him to do. And yet, seeing the twins asleep, hearing their soft breathing, watching the soldier relax for the first time, he knew he hadn't been wrong. Sometimes life demanded risk, demanded courage, demanded action. And sometimes it demanded nothing more than a simple offer of help. He leaned back in his chair and let his eyes drift closed for a moment, listening to the gentle sounds of breathing, the quiet creaks of the house, the faint wind outside. For now, that was enough. For tonight, they were safe. For tonight, they were together. And sometimes, that was the beginning of everything. The morning light came slowly, soft and pale, through the thin curtains of the small house. The twins stirred first, blinking sleep from their eyes, tangled under the blankets the father had laid out the night before. The soldier remained on the couch, sitting straight, hands folded on her lap, staring out the window at the quiet street. She hadn't slept much, though the weight of the night was finally starting to ease, just a little. The girls shuffled over to the kitchen, rubbing their eyes, and the father was already there, making a small breakfast. "Morning," he said gently, not overbearing, just present. "I made some eggs and toast. Coffee for the adults," he added, nodding to the soldier. The girls looked at the plates with cautious excitement, like they hadn't expected anything so simple, so ordinary. He watched them eat quietly, letting them take the lead. No questions about where they came from, no prying. Just breakfast. The soldier moved closer to the table. She poured herself coffee slowly, the liquid steaming in her hands. "You really didn't have to do this," she said, her voice softer than the night before. "I wanted to," he said simply. "I said it last night. You just needed a safe place. That's it." He offered a small smile, not trying to charm her, just to reassure her. She nodded, taking a sip, letting the warmth settle there a little. The twins talked softly between bites, their chatter mostly about school, toys, and small things that seemed normal. Their mother listened quietly, her eyes following them, making sure every movement was safe, every smile genuine. She still kept a distance from the father, a protective barrier she wasn't ready to remove. But she was starting to notice things she hadn't expected: the way he spoke to children, the way he moved around the house, the calm in his eyes. There was no judgment, no expectation, only presence. And presence, she realized, was rare. After breakfast, the father suggested they tidy up the kitchen together. It was an ordinary task, but in ordinary tasks, he thought, people found grounding. The twins scrubbed small dishes while he washed the larger ones. The soldier lingered, unsure what to do, hands twisting in her lap. Finally, he looked at her and said, "You don't have to do anything you don't want to. You just need to rest." She hesitated, then offered a small nod. They spent the morning like that, quietly, each finding small comfort in the routine. At one point, the soldier helped the twins with a puzzle, her fingers deft and careful, her voice low but patient. It was a different part of her life than the one they knew. The soldier, disciplined and strong, showing gentleness they hadn't seen before. She caught herself laughing quietly at something the older twin said, and the sound startled her. She hadn't laughed like that in weeks. By mid-morning, the father suggested they step outside. The air was crisp, the kind of cool that wakes you fully from sleep. He pointed to the small yard behind the house. "It's not much, but it's yours for now," he said, letting the twins run ahead, letting them feel space, freedom, and safety. The soldier stayed by the door for a moment, watching them, then followed slowly, taking in the simple yard, the small trees, the sunlight warming her shoulders. There was no one watching, no orders, no obligations, just space to breathe. They spent the day quietly, but a conversation lingered in the background, waiting for the soldier to speak. By late afternoon, she finally broke the silence. "I didn't know where to go," she said, voice small. She glanced at him, then at the twins, who were drawing with crayons on the floor. "We had nowhere safe, I thought. I thought we might sleep in the car." Her eyes flicked down, ashamed, yet searching for understanding. He listened. Not a word of judgment. "I know it's hard," he said. "And I know it's not just about tonight. It's everything before it. You've been carrying so much. And sometimes it gets heavier than anyone should bear alone." She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "I've been trying. I tried to do it all myself. But it's not enough." Her voice cracked slightly, though she quickly tried to steady it. "I didn't want them to see me fail." "They've seen you fight," he said softly. "That's what matters. Not the fight itself, but that you kept going. That you didn't give up on them." He didn't add that sometimes people need help, too. He didn't have to. She knew that already, in the quiet corners of her mind. The twins, sensing the seriousness, stopped what they were doing and climbed on her lap. She held them both, arms tight, letting the comfort of their weight ground her. She hadn't realized how tense she'd been until that moment. Just holding them, feeling their small bodies against hers, brought a flood of relief she hadn't expected. The father watched quietly, giving them space, but inside, he felt the familiar ache of connection. He knew what it meant to be alone, to be the one responsible for small lives that depended on you entirely. He had done it himself, and he understood the weight. And here she was, carrying it in silence, almost invisible under the strain, and he was there to share a fraction of it. Not to rescue, not to fix, just to be present. Later, he suggested they take a short drive to stretch legs and get fresh air. The twins jumped into the truck with excitement, their small laughter filling the space. The soldier hesitated, then climbed in beside him. He drove slowly, letting them point out trees, birds, small things they noticed along the road. It was ordinary, but in that ordinary, she found relief. She began to see that normal life wasn't just a fantasy. It was possible. And it was possible here, in this quiet, unassuming house, with someone who didn't demand, who didn't judge. By the time they returned, the soldier had loosened slightly. The tension in her shoulders was less noticeable, the way she held herself a little softer. She watched the father show the twins how to build a small fort with blankets, their eyes lighting up with delight. And she realized she hadn't smiled that freely in months. She sat down in the living room, letting herself watch without doing anything. Just watching them laugh, safe, alive, happy, it was enough for her. For now, she didn't have to fix anything. She didn't have to plan. She could simply exist in this small bubble of peace. The evening came slowly. The father suggested they have a small dinner together. Nothing fancy, just pasta and vegetables. He made sure to include things the girls liked. The soldier helped minimally, chopping vegetables quietly, watching the twins, letting him take the lead. There was no pressure, no rush, no judgment. Just a shared space where everyone was human, flawed, and trying. After dinner, he asked if they wanted to watch a movie, something light. The twins cheered, rushing to the couch. She sat beside them, letting herself relax into the moment. She hadn't expected comfort like this, hadn't believed comfort was possible anymore. The warmth, the laughter, the normalcy, it was all foreign, but welcome. And she began to see a path forward, one step at a time, with small gestures and ordinary moments shaping something stronger than fear and fatigue. Before bed, he offered to show them where they could sleep again. The twins scrambled to the blankets, happy, yawning. She lingered in the doorway, taking a deep breath, feeling the strange, quiet relief of trust forming slowly. The father didn't pry, didn't question. He simply made sure the space was comfortable, warm, and safe. And it was. That night, she held the twins close in bed, letting herself feel a sense of peace she hadn't felt in weeks. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about life was perfect. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, beginnings were the most powerful things of all. They didn't erase the past. They didn't promise the future. But they gave a chance to breathe, to rest, and to believe that maybe, just maybe, it could be better. As she drifted into a light, guarded sleep, the father sat quietly in the living room, watching the calm settle over the house. He knew there would be challenges, days that tested patience and courage. But tonight was proof that even in the hardest moments, human kindness, small choices, and trust could create something bigger than fear, something like a family. The days that followed were quiet, but they were full of small movements and tiny moments that spoke louder than words. The father had returned to his usual routines, work, chores, keeping the house in order, but now he carried the knowledge that two small girls and their mother were under his roof. The soldier remained cautious, still protective of her children, still watching every corner and measuring every step. But even she began to let down walls in the small rhythms of life. Breakfast together, making the beds, reading books, fixing small toys, sharing laughs that were timid at first, but genuine. The father noticed it slowly. The way the twins began to respond differently. They weren't clinging as tightly to their mother anymore. They would run ahead to help him carry groceries, giggle when he made small jokes, argue gently over which toys to use first. Their laughter filled the living room like sunlight spilling through the windows, and the soldier could not help but watch with quiet wonder. She realized that, for the first time in months, her children were allowed to be children again. She had been so focused on survival that she had forgotten what it meant to play, to smile freely, to rest. One afternoon, the father suggested a trip to the local library. It was simple: books, quiet corners, small tables, and the smell of pages. But it became a small adventure. The twins held his hands as they walked down the aisle, choosing picture books with wide-eyed fascination. The soldier followed a few steps behind, her back a little straighter, her shoulders less tense, watching the girls explore with wonder. She realized she hadn't felt this light in weeks, hadn't felt the weight lift, even a little. He encouraged the twins to pick books that interested them. One chose a story about a small dog who got lost and found its way home, while the other picked a book filled with colorful illustrations of different animals. He smiled at them as they settled on a small bench to read, and the soldier found herself sitting across from them, drawn in by the simple joy on their faces. It was ordinary, but ordinary was what she had been missing most of all. She let the silence stretch between them, letting the moment exist without expectation. Back at the house, the father helped the soldier sort through paperwork she had brought with her. Documents from her time in the military, her applications for benefits, and a stack of bills that had piled up. She hadn't realized how much she had neglected until he gently guided her through each piece. He didn't rush, didn't scold. He simply offered help when needed, explained things she had struggled to understand alone, and gave her time to process what needed to be done. It was not charity. It was partnership, in the most human sense. Evenings became a little easier. The father taught the girls small chores, making them feel capable and responsible, while also praising their efforts. The soldier joined in occasionally, chopping vegetables, folding laundry, or helping the girls with homework. At first, she moved through the tasks mechanically, still on guard. But she began to laugh softly when the twins teased each other, or when they made small mistakes and corrected them proudly. She began to realize that life didn't have to be all fear and exhaustion. It could include joy and safety and laughter. One night, after the twins were asleep, she sat on the couch with the father and spoke for the first time without the protective mask of a soldier. Her voice was quiet, barely above the hum of the heater. "I didn't know what to do anymore," she admitted. We had nowhere. I thought we might end up in the car. I was running out of options." Her hands twisted in her lap. "I didn't want them to see me fail." He listened quietly, letting her speak. He didn't rush to comfort her with platitudes or simple reassurances. Instead, he let her unburden herself. "You're not failing," he said finally. "You've been doing the best you can with what you had. And now you have a chance to breathe, to rest, to figure out the next step without fear." She looked at him, studying his face as if weighing the truth in his words. I didn't expect anyone to help," she whispered. "No one ever did? I thought it had to be me alone." He nodded. "I get that. I've been there. I know the feeling. But sometimes accepting help isn't weakness. It's strength. It means you can do more for them because you're not carrying everything by yourself." The conversation hung in the air, heavy but cleansing. For the first time, she let herself acknowledge how tired she had been, how alone she had felt, how desperately she had needed a break. And for the first time, she didn't feel judged for it. The father didn't stop there. He helped her find local resources, guiding her through veteran support programs, childcare options, and local food banks. He didn't take over. He simply offered guidance, showing her the paths she hadn't noticed or had been too exhausted to pursue. Step by step, she began to feel hope, not a false promise, but a real, tangible chance to regain stability. The twins thrived in the meantime. They explored the backyard, built forts from blankets, colored and drew pictures of small worlds, played simple games that reminded them of childhood they had almost forgotten. The soldier watched from the porch, sometimes participating, sometimes simply observing, allowing herself to feel joy without guilt. She began to realize that laughter didn't make her weak, that rest didn't make her lazy, that love, care, and guidance weren't things she had to earn. They were things she deserved to receive and to give. One evening, the soldier finally spoke openly about her struggles, about the nights she had spent alone, exhausted, trying to provide for the girls, trying to hold herself together when the system failed her. She admitted she had been moments away from giving up, from letting the weight of everything crush her. And in that moment, the father shared his own story. He told her about the long nights, the fear of not being enough, the constant worry over a child's future. He didn't compare their struggles. He simply shared them, showing her that she was not alone, that she didn't have to bear it all herself. The soldier listened, her hands twisting in her lap, tears coming unbidden. She had carried so much alone for so long that the release startled her. And the father, seeing the tears, didn't flinch or try to fix it. He just let them flow, showing her through his calm presence that vulnerability was allowed, that it was human. Over the next few days, the routine became steady. Meals were shared, chores divided, laughter returned. The soldier allowed herself to rest without guilt. The twins played and learned. The father supported without demanding. And slowly, she began to understand that what had happened at the diner wasn't just a moment of chance. It was the beginning of a small, fragile family forming by choice, not by circumstance, where trust and care replaced fear and exhaustion. The soldier realized that safety wasn't just a roof over her head. It was the trust she could place in someone who didn't take advantage, the peace of knowing that her children could laugh and play without worry, the comfort of knowing that someone would stand beside her without asking for repayment or loyalty beyond honesty. It was a freedom she hadn't felt in months, maybe years. One night, as the twins slept soundly, the soldier sat on the couch, looking at the father quietly. I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You didn't have to do this. You didn't know us." He shook his head. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because it was right. And because I know how it feels to be desperate, to need someone, and have no one there." She nodded slowly. I think I understand now. It's not about pride. It's about survival and trust. And maybe about learning that not all strangers are threats." He smiled gently. "Exactly. And sometimes the people who come into your life unexpectedly are the ones who help you the most." The soldier leaned back, letting the words settle. She realized she had been carrying the weight of the world for too long, trying to protect her children alone. And now, with the father's presence, the weight had lessened. She wasn't free from all her problems, but for the first time in a long while, she felt capable of facing them. The twins stirred in their sleep, tiny murmurs of comfort passing between them. She reached over, brushing a loose strand of hair from one of their faces, feeling the small warmth of their trust and dependence. And she realized something powerful. That trust, once given, could grow into something stronger than fear. That small acts of kindness, sustained over time, could create stability where none existed. That a family wasn't always defined by blood, but by presence, care, and shared moments. As the night deepened, the father checked on the twins once more, tucking the blankets around them. The soldier watched, feeling a sense of gratitude that went beyond words. She knew challenges lay ahead, paperwork to finish, housing to secure, routines to establish. But for the first time, she also knew she wasn't facing them alone. Father's support was steady, silent, unassuming, but powerful in its consistency. It reminded her that even in the hardest circumstances, human connection could carry you farther than fear ever could. And as the house fell quiet again, the soldier allowed herself to rest, truly rest, knowing that for her and her children, safety, care, and hope were no longer distant dreams. They were here, tangible and real. For the first time in months, maybe years, she could breathe. The weeks passed in a rhythm that felt almost ordinary, but every day carried a quiet weight of change. The soldier had begun to settle into a pattern she hadn't imagined possible. Meals at the table without stress, the girls laughing as they explored the backyard, a moment in the day just to breathe. It was still simple, still fragile, but it was real. The father continued to work and maintain his home. Yet every glance at the twins reminded him why he had acted so boldly that night at the diner. They weren't his family by blood, but they had become part of his life in a way that mattered more than anything. One afternoon, the soldier stood at the doorway, looking out at the yard as the twins ran around, chasing each other and shrieking with delight. She hadn't known life could feel this light. She realized she had been so focused on surviving, on protecting her children, that she hadn't noticed what she and they were missing, the small joys, the ordinary happiness. She had been trying to shoulder the world alone, and now she could see that help didn't take anything from her. It gave her more. The father joined her on the porch, hands tucked into his pockets, watching the girls. "They're happy," he said simply. "It shows how strong they are, and how strong you are too." She turned to him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I didn't realize I could feel this. Normal. For months, maybe years, I've been waiting for a chance to feel safe, to feel like I'm doing enough. And now—" She shook her head slightly, as if trying to put her thoughts into order. "Now it feels possible." He nodded. "Normal isn't always easy, but it's worth holding on to. And you've earned this. You've earned a chance to breathe." It wasn't long before the soldier began to make plans for the future. The father helped her connect with a veteran support program, guiding her through applications and resources she hadn't been able to navigate alone. She found a small apartment within walking distance of a good school for the twins and a reliable job opportunity. Each step she took was cautious, careful, measured, but it was forward. And through it all, the father didn't intrude. He offered advice when asked, support when needed, but he never rushed her. The twins, of course, had their own feelings about leaving the house. They had grown attached to the father and to the sense of stability he had provided. They clung to him, their small arms wrapped around his legs, their faces pressed against his coat as he knelt to their level. "We don't want to leave," the older one said softly. "Can we come back?" He lifted them gently, holding them close. "You can come back whenever you want," he said. "This place will always be here for you, and so will I." The younger twin tugged at his sleeve. "Promise?" "Promise," he said, letting the words settle in their hearts. They smiled, small but real, and for the first time he felt a warmth that had nothing to do with pride or obligation. It was something deeper: connection, trust, family. Moving day arrived, and it was filled with a quiet mix of excitement and nervousness. Boxes were packed, small toys carefully wrapped, favorite books stacked in neat piles. The father helped load the car, carrying the heavier boxes himself, while the twins ran around, making sure nothing important was left behind. The soldier supervised, checking lists, making sure each item had a place in the new apartment. And through it all, the father moved alongside them, steady, calm, never intrusive, simply part of the flow of life. As they drove to the new apartment, the twins pressed their faces to the windows, pointing out trees, houses, and the occasional bird. Their voices were animated, lively, and their mother glanced at them with a quiet smile, letting herself enjoy the moment. She realized that in all the stress and fear, she hadn't given herself permission to simply watch her children be happy. And now she could. When they arrived, the apartment felt small but bright. The soldier began unpacking boxes with a sense of purpose, arranging the space to be comfortable and familiar for the twins. She had chosen carefully, thinking of the little things that mattered: a shelf for their favorite books, a small table for drawing, a corner with a soft blanket for reading. She realized that creating safety didn't have to be grand. It was in these small touches, these ordinary details, that real stability lived. The father helped where he could, carrying boxes up the stairs, setting up furniture, offering guidance without taking control. The twins giggled as they claimed their new space, arranging toys and decorating their corners with crayons and stickers. The soldier watched, her heart swelling with something she hadn't expected: relief, hope, gratitude. And when she turned to look at the father, he simply nodded at her, a small, knowing gesture. No words were needed. He had seen her struggle. He had seen her fight. And now he had seen her begin to heal. That evening, after the move, the father stayed for dinner, not out of obligation, but because it felt right. They ate together, the twins chattering about their favorite parts of the new apartment, the soldier laughing quietly, her voice lighter than it had been in weeks. For the first time in a long while, they felt like a family, not because of shared blood, but because of shared moments, trust, and care. After dinner, the father helped tuck the twins into their small beds. They hugged him tightly, holding on as if they didn't want to let go. "We'll see you again, right?" the older one whispered. "Of course," he said. "I'll always be here for you." The younger twin nodded, eyes wide. "Always," she said when the soldier closed the door after him. She leaned against it for a moment, exhaling deeply. She felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time: relief, peace, and gratitude. She realized that the father's actions hadn't just helped her children, they had helped her too. He had reminded her that asking for help didn't make her weak, that trusting someone didn't mean losing control, and that family could be chosen, nurtured, and built through kindness and presence. Days turned into weeks, and the routine settled into something steady. The father continued to check in, sometimes with small meals, sometimes with toys or books for the twins, sometimes simply to sit and talk. The soldier welcomed his presence now, no longer defensive, no longer wary. He had become a fixture in their lives, a steady hand and a gentle guide. And in return, he found something he hadn't expected, a sense of fulfillment beyond his own home, a connection that reminded him why he had acted that night at the diner. One evening, the soldier took the twins to the small park nearby. They ran, laughed, and climbed on the playground, their voices ringing in the warm air. She watched them, heart full, feeling the immense weight of responsibility that had once crushed her lighten. She realized she could face the future with them, with hope instead of fear, because someone had shown her what it meant to trust, to accept help, and to believe that safety and love were possible. The father arrived later, bringing ice cream for everyone. The twins cheered, running to him with open arms. She watched the scene, smiling quietly, realizing that the bond they had formed was enduring. It wasn't about obligation or chance anymore. It was about choice, care, and the quiet power of human kindness. That night, as the twins slept in their new beds, the soldier sat on the couch, holding a small blanket the father had given her for comfort. She thought back to the diner, to the night when a stranger had seen them, acted without judgment, and offered them safety. She realized that moment had changed everything, not just for her and her daughters, but for the father as well. He had taken a risk, followed his heart, and in doing so, had helped create a family that didn't exist before, but now felt real. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Thank you." And she knew, in a way, that the words were too small for what she felt. Gratitude wasn't enough. She wanted to live in a way that honored the kindness they had received, to show her children that help could be given freely, and trust could be returned with love. Outside, the house stood quiet under the moonlight. The father drove home slowly, reflecting on what had happened over the past few weeks. He thought about the twins, about the soldier, about the small acts of courage and trust that had brought them together. He realized that family wasn't only made by blood or circumstance, it was made by choices, by care, and by moments when people acted with heart, even when it was risky or inconvenient. The soldier tucked the twins in one last time, kissing their foreheads gently. She held them close for a moment, breathing in the small rise and fall of their chests, feeling the warmth and safety of the home she had fought to create. She had learned something profound, that even when life seemed impossible, help could arrive in the most unexpected way, and it could change everything. And in the quiet, she allowed herself to imagine a future she had thought impossible A future with laughter, stability, and hope. A future where she could be both mother and woman, strong but not alone, capable but supported. A future where the father's simple act of courage and care had created more than safety. He had created a chance for life to bloom again. And so, the story didn't end with just survival. It ended with beginnings. Beginnings that were quiet, ordinary, and extraordinary all at once. The twins slept, safe and happy. The soldier rested, her heart lighter than it had been in months. And the father drove home, carrying with him the knowledge that one choice, one simple act of humanity at a diner, had changed lives forever. They had found each other in a moment of need. And in that moment, they had built a family not perfect, not easy, but real. And sometimes that is all that matters.